Wayne Doorband here for the biweekly NTP CEED webinar huddle that we hold here at our Northern Colorado headquarters in Loveland, Colorado, both live here at our site and also going out over the web to those of you that are watching. Enjoy what we have for you today.
Hello everyone, welcome to Nurses Planet's biweekly webinar. This week we have Oistein Thorson in, and he is going to share with us his methods with livestock, in particular chickens. And let's see. So I guess to start off, Oistein, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up and where you are, and we'll roll from there.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here. Where I am, I'm in New York City right now on the 25th floor of a building, looking straight at the New World Trade Center. But I am from Norway. I grew up in East Africa, in Kenya, Sudan, and Ethiopia. And I've lived in the U.S. for about seven or 8 years, and before that, I spent some time in the UK, as well as obviously my native Norway. So.
Okay, very interesting. So you've been all over. Through all your travels, were you always interested in livestock in the way you are now? Was this a lifelong interest of yours, or is it something you found later in life?
A bit of both, I would say. So my mother grew up on a farm, a small dairy operation in Norway, and she was never particularly keen on farming. But we spent our summers and visited my grandparents regularly. So, and still my cousins and a couple of my uncles are still farming. So I'd say I'm, coming from a farming background in that sense, family background. And then obviously when sort of growing up in Ethiopia, I'd say I sort of experienced quite firsthand the impact of what can happen when a food system really collapses. Mm-hmm. And we were there just after the mid-80s sort of famine, and in the sort of aftermath of that. And I think that sort of made a pretty profound impact on me, and both sort of personally, but also sort of professional trajectories. So I went into development studies and African studies, studied political economy, and really worked in the humanitarian field for many years with Oxfam, Oxfam International, both in the UK and here in New York at the UN. And it was relatively recently that I had the opportunity to join the company I now work for, Benchmark, through a sort of, a friend that I used to live with. They were looking for more people to join the company, and somehow it kind of, came full circle, and I got the opportunity to really work on, not just, assisting where things have collapsed, but really being part of potentially creating better systems for food production, and that's what Benchmark is really about, and it's been a privilege. So
wonderful. Well, why don't you elaborate on what Benchmark is and what you do with them, and your goal?
So Benchmark is a company. We've been around for about 15 years. Started in the UK. It grew out of essentially animal welfare consulting with retailers and supermarkets in the UK, and over the years we've really grown to now offer quite a broad set of services, both to terrestrial agriculture but also aquaculture, and we work essentially in 4 different divisions. So we have a animal health division. We're a big veterinary service provider, especially to aquaculture farmers, fish farmers. We have a recent addition to the group, which is a genetics and breeding division, and really looking at how we can breed better animals. So far, we're looking at salmon, breeding for disease resistance and things like that. We do publishing, both online and books, and really online training. That's one part of our business. Also to food production, people in food production. And finally, it's the division that I work in, which is the sustainability science division, which we do research and consulting. So it's quite a broad scope. The work that we do specifically, and in my division, is around, as I said, helping retailers, food producers, restaurant chains with sort of sourcing and producing good food better, really. So we help them define their standards, audit their standards, making sure that they're that what they say they can back up. We can help them measure what matters, both figuring out what in their supply chain is worth measuring, and also putting in place the systems for collecting and analyzing that data effectively. We run R&D programs to sort of really improve practice and drive progress, which is what I'll talk about in a second as a example. And also all the way through to really helping with the communications and the brand and the design for how we can tell better stories around sustainability and what our partners are doing.
All right, so you just run the whole gambit.
Yep.
Got a company from non-sustainable to sustainable.
Hopefully, yes, or at least on that journey, and I think that's a lot of people probably are have asked themselves the question, what is sustainability, and it often means different things to different people.
Very true.
And for us, it's really that there's three pillars to it. It's ethics, economics, and environment. Our three E's, if you like. And I think it's really about a journey rather than necessarily an end destination, because the effect of it, or the success of sustainability, is really not for us to decide. That's for future generations. So the best we can do is get the direction right, get ourselves on that journey, and measure and drive the progress. So.
Well, that's really great. You kind of just segued right into a question I was going to ask you, but we'll go a little farther with it. What does sustainability really mean to you? So you told us what it means for Benchmark. What is it for you?
I think it's about future proofing, really. And so really in line with future proofing, yeah. Okay. So it's really in line with what we do. It's trying to, in the face of scarcity, in the face of shocks, environmental or societal, sustainability is kind of a roadmap or a direction. So how can you keep different priorities at the top when staking out a course forward? So for us, that's really about, for ethics. We talk about ethics in terms of both, in food production, that includes the animals that we rely on and that we farm, as well as obviously the workers and the people, the societies where the operations sit, the communities. And obviously the economics is about, if you're going to be out of business tomorrow, it's not sustainable. So you have to take that part into account. And obviously environment is what we, that's what we live and breathe. So it's sort of trying, for me, it's about getting the direction of the journey right. So we're better prepared for tomorrow.
Very good, very good, very interesting. Now, who are some people that may have really inspired you and influenced you in this field as you were coming up and learning about more of it and growing up and hearing about sustainability and working in the field? Who are your main inspirations?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier, and I find it hard to single out individual people in the field, and I think it's partly because I think sometimes as a society we do a little bit too much of the individual hero worshipping, and I think that there's nobody who's credited with achieving great things did it on their own, whether it is a great innovation, building a successful business, leading a social movement. I think they all really rely on colleagues, they rely on friends, family, they rely on the follower in some way. So I couldn't really sort of put one person on a pedestal. I guess I sort of want to celebrate the movement, if you like. But having said that, there's obviously, I remember a few years ago reading Michael Pollan's Noah's Dilemma. That was before I started working with Benchmark, and I was really boring my girlfriend at the time. I think about all the exciting things you can talk about around manure over dinner. So I think I'll give him some credit. Really inspiring.
Okay. That sounds like a real charming conversation to have.
Yeah, right?
Okay. Well, why don't we bring up your presentation and you can share with us what you're doing with chickens.
Yes.
Okay.
Be happy to. So, I'd like to just share sort of culmination of work that we've been doing for over several years, really around poultry, summarized in this phrase, chicken-centered design. So, as many people know, the poultry industry, like many other animal agriculture sectors, have really developed immensely over the last few. Factor really has been maximizing efficiency, and that's down to the breeding of the birds, through to the barn designs, the lighting, the feed, etc. It's all about essentially more food for less cost, and this has also come with some come with a high price in some regards, and especially around the welfare and the health of the animals that we farm. So in the case of chicken, some of the most common problems are quite closely related to both the genetics of the birds, but also the sort of general management of commercial poultry farms, including poor leg health, really reduced activity of the birds, overly large sort of breast size, which makes it very hard for them to walk. Also, they're growing so fast that sometimes the sort of intestinal system are finding it hard to keep up. So, trying to address some of those challenges while also knowing we are trying to provide affordable protein for a growing number of people, we've sort of taken this chicken-centered design approach, and the basis of it is really our kind of definition, if you like, of animal welfare that is centered around a healthy bird that has what it wants, which is essentially a definition developed by a professor in the UK called Marion Dawkins. But we find that really simple sentence, combining health and natural behavior, expression of natural behavior, is a really great sort of roadmap to design good systems. So, what do we mean by chicken-centered design? in many aspects of life and product design, we do user-centered design. So whether you're designing a park or a mobile phone app or a hospital, the first thing people usually ask themselves is who's going to use this and what do they want from this? Yet this is not very common in animal agriculture. We've usually designed systems around the user being the farmer, or perhaps the consumer, not so much the animal. So that's kind of what we're kind of trying to do with this, is bring the animal in as a user of the agricultural systems. And to begin that process, we really look back into into the sort of history of chicken. Who is the chicken that we farm today, and where did it come from? And the ancestor of today's chicken, as many of you probably know, is the Southeast Asian red jungle fowl. And that fowl basically lived in a forested area, quite warm temperature, protected by canopy of trees, a lot of shade. The trees also provided protection from predators from above. Below the trees, there were opportunities for scratching, picking for food, dust bathing, as well as opportunities for elevation and perching, which are all sort of essentially key innate natural behaviors of the ancestor of chickens. So our hypothesis was, if you can design systems that allow for the expression of some of those behaviors, you'll get a positive outcome. So I'll share with you just two quick examples. So one was in egg production. So we started with a free-range egg production system in the UK. Our client at the time was McDonald's UK, who had 10 years earlier made a commitment to only source free-range eggs. And one of the things that they had found in talking to their farmers were that the farmers weren't really seeing a huge benefit from those systems, and also they all mentioned that the chickens didn't really use the range very much. They would huddle outside of the chicken shed, right outside. They didn't really roam at all. So we looked back at the sort of the where does chicken come from, and we suggested that perhaps we should plant some trees. And through our trials on our own farm in the UK, with multiple with different types of birds, we found that even with as little as 5% tree cover on the range, you saw incredible benefits. So the theory is basically the chickens are very scared of an open field, and many free-range fields are completely open. They're barren, a barren field essentially, which they find terrifying because of fear of predators, rough weather, whether it's sun or rain or whatever. They don't like it. So by giving them trees, we saw that they started roaming much more. They walked way more. Their leg health improved by using the range and pecking more. Pecking on the ground, we saw reduced feather pecking between the egg layers. We had reduced mortality, as you can see on the slide, and also this reduction of egg seconds, which is a lower quality egg, which farmers get less money for. So not only did we see benefits for the bird, the welfare and the health of the bird, but also really financial benefits for the farmer, as well as obviously the environmental benefits of planting trees, and the contribution that can have to both improving soil health, reducing water runoff, and ultimately sequestering carbon. And it sort of opens up the opportunity for really multi-cropping if you like, the same field. So just a really, really positive case study of something as simple as planting trees can really have huge benefits.
Yeah. I have a quick question on that, though. Did you ever see any increase in predators? Because there was tree perching.
So the second example I wanted to share with you is quite a different situation. So this was working with a design school in London called the Royal College of Art. They have a program there called RCA Sustain that goes across the whole design school, and we help them basically facilitate a project with a number of master students to really reimagining a broiler house or the inside of a broiler house. So that was more indoor systems, commercial systems. How can we, going back to some of those challenges of reduced activity, bad leg health, etc., that we sometimes see in those houses, how can we, through a really creative design process, as well as some real sort of limitations on cost and obviously which kind of materials you use, create essentially enrichment devices that will improve the welfare of the birds. So, for those who don't know, enrichment is basically a device that can really maintain and sustain the interest of the bird, that can increase the sort of desired behavior that you want to see in a bird, as well as decrease detrimental behaviors, whether that be feather pecking or something like that. And it also needs to really be practical to implement, so cheap and easy, not be in the way for the farmer, kind of thing. So these design students really went through a sort of explore, define, develop process, which they do when they design as I said earlier, a mobile phone app or something else, but really looking at the chicken house, and they did visits to a variety of different systems, high welfare, more standard systems, etc. And one of the sort of suggestions they had coming out of that was a bale. So in some houses, you see some bales, but there's some problems with it, and you'll see on the slide here is kind of, the top one is kind of the life cycle of a classic hay bale that you might see in a chicken house. It's on day one, it's way too big for the little chicks to engage with, and then as the bird grows, it can engage with it, but it'll quickly fall apart. As they start sort of pecking on it, it will just disintegrate. So by the end of the life cycle, there is basically gone. So the students were trying to think of a design that would sort of keep their interest and have mobilize that positive behavior throughout the life cycle of the bird, as you can see below. So one design they came up with was this one, which was basically using a sort of natural resin to make it hold together, allowed it to last for longer, and also because it sort of has different different heights, and is not just a big sort of square block. It does, as you can see here, it allows the very young chicks to engage with it, as well as the bigger ones can sort of perch on it as they grow older. So this is much more in the sort of early stages, a sort of concept project, and we're now in the phase of sort of trialing this out on our farm in the UK, and looking for partners to do the same. But it's just another example of sort of just providing a fresh perspective, bringing people in that have a different perspective. You can again really realize these great benefits. So for the farmer, because of the materials used, it's very cheap. It has low or no maintenance. Really, it's biodegradable, so you can go out with the rest of the litter when the litter is changed. Cheap and simple. And for the chicken, you really see that increased movement, the entertainment effect, if you like, lasting throughout their lifetime, improved foot health, and also it can be created as a sort of edible element as well, with seeds being put in there, and sort of really facilitating them getting in there and pecking and scratching. So yeah, that was it really. Just two small examples of how we sort of approach things a little bit differently.
Is the chicken-centered design applicable and usable for other species? So is there a cow-centered design or a pig-centered design?
Yeah, I think we look at this sort of welfare definition, if you like, as a starting point for most of our work in livestock. So so in pork production, for example, we've looked at different types of feed trials. So again, it's looking at both the health and growth. So health and growth and behavioral traits of the pigs, in how you feed and what you feed them, as well as the environmental impact on the various feeds that you're using. So we ran a trial with sort of substituting soy, for example, with various legumes that we grew or that we grow on our farm, and we saw that even though some of the ingredients had a lower sort of ultimate lower level of protein in it, the uptake for the pigs were about the same. So the growth rate were about the same, and sort of really saw that sometimes you can get the same result without sort of super packing the feed, if you like. So again, having a positive environmental impact, but also a good impact on the animals. Yeah. So sort of trying to yeah.
Do you believe that, in your own opinion, animal protein will be the way to go for providing protein in diets around the world?
I don't think it's this. I don't think there's one answer to that. I don't think there's one particular product that's gonna feed the world. I think we need to really explore opportunities across the board, both in animal production, which types of animals, how we raise those animals, what their feed is. Maybe really explore as much as possible using feeds that aren't directly in competition with what people want to eat, and obviously I think meat has an important place in many people's diets. I think it's obvious that many people eat more than they should, and and for some it's a real luxury that can have a huge impact on their on their diet and health, depending on what part of the world we're talking about. So yeah, I think it's obviously it's one of those questions where really a balanced approach, in the same way as a balanced diet is really the way forward, as I see it.
Maybe there should be another pillar of equity.
Of equity, yeah, that's right. That's right. The fourth E. That's right.
how much time did you really spend hanging out with chickens?
Well, if I answer that on the collective, we spend a lot of time watching the chickens.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have many of them in my office here in New York, but I have several colleagues who really really spend their time doing that. So
Okay, just as curious. Just as curious.
but I did, it's if I could, I would. My involvement in chicken farming is more from when I was little, and I had a few chickens in the backyard, and then I see it more from a distance and through my scientific and farmer colleagues who do it every day. So.
Someone in our audience has mentioned that you seem so young. And how did you break into this field already?
I look younger than I am. No. No, it was one of those I'd say a little, just funny things that happen. I think I was looking for a change, and I had the opportunity to meet with the directors of Benchmark, and we met several times over quite a long period of time before we sort of realized they were ready and I was ready. So it was it's sort of one of those when stars align and you find people that you connect with. We felt like we were on the same page, and Benchmark was ready to to grow and expand, and I was lucky to be able to join them. So.
Are you a vegetarian by chance? That was kind of
I am not. I was a vegetarian for 5 years during my, I guess it was during my time as a student mostly, and then I stopped. Now I'd say I'm a flexitarian.
okay. Conscientious omnivore.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I'm a flexible omnivore. So.
What is the cost to the farmer for your bales, or is this still in a research and development stage?
The cost of that prototype is very, very limited. So, but again, this is a prototype, so we're sort of figuring out how this would be rolled out, whether it is a product that the farmers can buy in the same way as they can buy bedding, or if it's something that you sort of just make a quick sort of list of ingredients or how to guide available and people can make it themselves.
Okay.
But I think what we're looking at is not really increasing the cost. So if you put them in, then maybe you could save some on reduced bedding, for example, or that it's the same ingredient. You're just compacting it using a natural resin, things like that. So one of the key goals of the design process from the beginning was really keeping costs to a minimum.
Okay.
Because obviously we know that the margins are very tight in chicken production. So. There's no point in sort of being too utopian about what should go in there, because then you won't get any, you just won't get any uptake.
Okay. In the free-range chicken systems where there were trees, my mind immediately went to that the trees would provide a place for predators, particularly birds of prey, to perch. But was that not the case in your systems?
The trees are for a variety of things. So they, depending on what kind of tree you use and where, what kind of foliage, if you like, they have, they can be great for perching. but also they provide shade, and they provide sort of that I would say shade is one of the really most important things, but also they provide a more diverse, just a more diverse environment on the range, which is which they're really happy about, and makes them sort of roam more, and having those pieces of shade in the middle of the range means that they'll step out of the the sort of comfort zone right by the chicken coop, which we see a lot. They'll sort of all sit in the area where the shade falls from the from the physical structure. So.
Okay.
What is your take on current standards and certifications for animal welfare?
I think on the regulation front, there's really not that much. I think in terms of labeling and certification, my main concern at the moment is perhaps confusion. So there's a few different labels out there. Some of them have very similar names. They appear interchangeable for the consumer. They can be a little confusing. So whether it's certified humane or humane certified, or I think there's perhaps a need for a little bit clearer communication. Maybe also sort of collating around or coming together around a fewer set of standards, and sort of really focusing on making it wider, if you like, going bigger, getting more farmers involved in those sort of certifications. But I think one of the shortfalls that we see is that sometimes certifications are very focused on input standards, so they're quite detailed around what exactly a farmer should do, rather than having standards that are focused on what outcome do you want to see. What kind of health benefits do you want to see? What kind of what should the state of the bird or the animal in general be at the end of it for you to say this is a good, this animal had good husbandry. So we always try to move things in that direction, focus on designing for the outcomes that you want to see. Another sort of risk, I guess, is and perhaps this is, especially with broilers, is that a lot of the systems, even if they're certified, they don't look that different. And I think appearance more and more matters in the sort of age of digital technology and extreme kind of transparency. Everyone has a video camera in their pockets, and so being able to tell a really powerful story, which I think is what something like chicken-centered design allows you to tell, a very intuitive, visual, as well as real outcome-based story for why what you're doing is better or improved to what you did before. I think is really important. So.
Okay.
With all the different labels you see on products on the shelves these days, you can see, especially in regards to just chicken, you'll see free range, you'll see pasture raised or cage free. Do you think this adds too much confusion for the consumer?
Yeah. Even I see a lot of packaging using, they want to differentiate the product basically using things that are complete industry standards. So you'll find chicken meat that says cage free. Well, pretty much all production of chicken meat is cage free. So it's you're using a line that you think consumers might like to see, but you're also kind of confusing them because you're implying that somebody else is producing in cages. The same with use of hormones in chicken production. You see that very often on labels with a tiny little star next to it, and at the bottom it says use of hormones has been, is illegal. So it's, I think there's, we're in that phase at the moment. I think where companies are realizing the sort of how products and how food is produced matters to consumers, and they're all looking for differentiation, and some of that differentiation is superficial, it's confusing. Things like natural, very weak definition of it, but people love using that word because it evokes certain things in the producer which might not have anything to do with how that animal was raised, but they'll use it because they think they can get a benefit out of it. So I think so while that's a problem, the good thing is obviously the companies are seeing this trend, and also that this trend is actually happening. So I think it's the opportunity now is really for progressive companies to capture it with real meaning.
Okay.
What is your take on urban farming, and do you see it in your own neighborhoods?
I think it's I think it's great in the sense that people are interested in where their food come from. People want to have a closer relationship to food production. I think any initiative that can educate, especially urban populations, urban kids, about how food is produced is extremely valuable. I don't think we're ever going to feed New York City based on backyard chickens, but I think their value is sort of beyond that, if you like. It's more I see the real value in education, in creating a connection, and in just making people care about where their food comes from, which means that they'll apply that knowledge and that awareness to the food choices they make 3 or 4 times a day. Even if they're not producing it all, they now might know a little bit more about what questions to ask, or what labels to look for, or ignore. So I think it's a positive movement.
Okay.
What other projects is Benchmark working on?
So we have a really exciting project that we recently started in Oxford, in the UK, which is a sort of joint system of growing carp, so the fish, in a pond, and with ducks in a sort of symbiotic relationship, if you like. So the ducks essentially are providing the nutrients for the water, which then provides essentially the feed for the carp. So it's a really, it's an ancient production method, really. I mean, it's been going on in China and elsewhere for years and years at the sort of small scale subsistence level, and we're trialing that out in more of a modern setting in the UK, which I'm really excited about. And it's finding that mix of fish and terrestrial production is really cool. So that's a new project for us that we're excited about. Let me see, what else do we do?
Are those systems natural or man-made?
No, that's a pond that we've created on our farm. Yeah.
And then what does the future hold? What's down the road in your journey towards sustainability?
Our future project, we're excited about the U.S. really. So U.S. is a young if you like, market for benchmark. We haven't been here very long, and we don't have the kind of presence here that we do in the UK and elsewhere. But I think there's quite a lot of potential for us here. I see the issue of animal welfare, for example, being a sort of emerging issue in the US, both amongst consumers and producers. There's increased awareness of it, and I think we can offer an interesting and perhaps different approach to how to build that into a company's systems. So we're excited about that, and obviously, you know, we see aquaculture also as a really exciting area. It's a fast-growing sector of sort of animal protein production. It's one that we're deeply engaged in a number of different ways, and I think helping to grow that industry again in the US, but also elsewhere, is continues to be very exciting for us. So.
Wonderful.
Okay, Oistein, well, thank you so much for joining us from New York. We're glad that we could chat with you all the way over here in Colorado. And we thank you again for sharing, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Very good. Thank you for inviting me on.